Hi, welcome back to the What Are You Thinking podcast. Lynette Lewis here with my husband, Ron. We're so glad that you're with us today. We have got an extraordinary guest friend of ours today who's got a story, multiple stories that I think you're going to deeply relate to. So we are glad you joined us. And Ron's going to tell us just a couple quick tidbits about our great special guest today.
Yeah, so this is really exciting to be with my friend Gilbert Foliente, and he's the president of Victory Church in Manila, Philippines, and has a massive reach. And we're going to hear more about that later. But we want to go to you. Welcome to this podcast, my friend. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ron and Lynette, for allowing me to be here and share my story. It's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think about New York City, first of all?
New York, live, bustling, everything. I love New York.
What you been doing? You've been here about maybe a week or so?
Yes.
Yeah, you were in the States doing a wedding, I know.
Yes, I did a wedding, and then I stayed a little bit here in New York because you're in New York, right? And then to see you and see friends and family here. So
I want to say you came to our church on Sunday and you gave a great message.
Yes.
I have pondered that message. And if you guys know, when you listen to a message, if it sticks with you every day and you get another tidbit, you know it's a good message. And that's how your message has been sticking with me all week, really on the difference we can make by plugging in deeply where we live and what we do in our city that we're living in. So thank you for doing that.
thank you.
That was great.
I want to start by just getting into your life story, Gilbert. I mean, you're a fascinating person. You have massive followership, and people really look up to you. But we see you today, and you got it together. But when you were young, like let's start when you were 6 years old. That's sort of like that. Your alarm clock went off then, and you have memories of what it was like growing up where you were.
Yeah, I grew up in Manila, Philippines. Manila is, for those who know, the Philippines are majority poor, and I grew up in a rough neighborhood. My parents were from a well-off family, but my dad was like the middle. The His dad loves the daughter, and his mom loves the son. So he grew up as a black sheep of the family. He did not finish college, so we were having a hard time, rough time, a poor neighborhood, rough neighborhood. And when I was 6, I vividly remember we were eating dinner, and then we heard screech of tires, like car chase. Like, so we got out of our house, and when we got out of our house, there was a commotion, and somebody got out, and somebody got a knife and stabbed him right in front of me. I was 6 years old
Mm.
during this time,
Goodness.
and that's kind of uh, a bit common where I grew up in. That's the
Wow.
reason why when I was telling Ron, when I was young, my ambition, like you ask kids, right? What do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a gangster. Because
Wow.
that's power, that's authority. That's like, if you're a gangster, then you're able to do that because of those stuff that I've been exposed to when I was young.
What was that like for you to see that? I mean, did it haunt you? Did it even have relevance to your mental awareness? I mean, what is that like?
That was interesting. I always try to look back and thought, because when I was an adult, I thought that's a traumatic experience for a 6-year old to see. But I would look back, and I would say it wasn't trauma for me. I would say it's more like, wow. And then I thought, in order for you to survive, in order for you to be the one, then you need to be tough. So I think that's more what its effect on me was. That's why I think growing up, like, people want to be a doctor, people want to be a lawyer. I want to be a gangster. So because of that.
Mm.
This is the classic situation in so many people here in New York City and around the world where it's all about survival mentality. I mean, maybe people didn't feel insecure. Maybe they didn't feel like they were going to die or be killed, but maybe they just feel like it's like my life is about just making it. I got to make it through this. And I think in your life, perhaps there was a motivation to break free from what you were in. I think that's my story, but
Yes. It was I'm not sure if it was my motivation as it was my mom. My mom wanted us to get out of that situation in life. Like, so my mom thought she would she would try her best for us not to be on the street and play and be friends with the people in the rough neighborhood. But what they thought was, in order for us to get you out of this situation, for you to have a better life, education is the best thing that we can give you. So they made ends meet. They tried everything, 2 jobs, 3 jobs, in order to get
Mm.
us to a good school, and I'm grateful for that. We got into good schools, so that's the thing. That
Sounds like you had a good family too.
yes,
I mean,
my
what a gift.
yeah, my parents, we're not religious. They're not religious. They don't go to church or all that, but they've got certain values and aspirations in life that I really appreciate. During that time, of course, I couldn't appreciate, why won't you allow me to go out and be friends and do whatever I wanted to do. So, but yeah, looking back, they're great, man.
That's really, isn't that encouraging though when you hear that as a parent? Because you really realize as your kids get older that you're not limited by what you see, what is, but you're limited by your thinking. That's why we talk on this podcast about what are you thinking? If you think that your assignment is what is, then you'll accept what is and never really try to press through. But it sounds like your mom in particular, but both your parents thought there's got to be more for my kids. And it's interesting how parenting will do that to you, because it's one thing to sort of think for yourself and you can make do. But when you have children, the thought of them having it worse or even like you've got it now is not acceptable to most people. And so you eventually what how old were you when you started moving out and into other things?
Yeah, so they put us in a good school. I got into a good high school, and then eventually I got into a good university. So I had a new set of friends from that school. So the thinking, yeah, was you were saying, the thinking started changing. Like, there's life outside of being a gangster. There's life outside violence and being
Somehow, when I
tough.
look at you today, I don't think I can't even imagine that you had any gangster tendencies, or
No, that's what my friends
I mean, you
say
don't even
too.
have a tattoo that I see. There
I've
they
got,
are.
I've got.
Okay, gotcha. But
But yeah,
yeah,
so the thinking started changing because you're now with a new group of people. So
Hmm.
again, when you're saying, what are you thinking? It's so important. I think being with the right kind of people really affects the way you think.
Yes.
So then there's new aspirations, then there's new dreams and visions. Like, then I start dreaming, oh, I can have a better life. I
yeah.
can have a life outside of that rough neighborhood that I grew up in. So that's how it progressed from there.
So maybe after survival, the next phase might be an element of success.
That's the dream now. So during the time, like, okay, now I can be successful. So I remember after high school, they're asking what major do you want to take in college and the university. And the only thing is, what would make me rich? Where's
Yeah.
the money at? So
Show me the money.
yeah, show me the money. And then it's funny. So I went to the university, and the registrar, the college registrar, said, "Oh, take actuarial science, because actuarial science. Oh, there's lots of money in actuarial science.
What
You're
kind of science?
Actuary.
actuary."
Actuary.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes,
So
of
that's like
course.
some very. Were you good at math? And
Yeah, I was applied math major in actuarial science.
wow.
Wow.
So they said that's the backbone of every insurance company, the actuaries.
Oh
So,
yeah.
so they
That's
said,
right.
"You're gonna." Yeah, so that's what I did.
So they
I
were.
didn't even know what actuarial science was during that time. I just thought, money. Okay, that's me. Let me
Oh,
go
that's
there.
so funny. It's like most of the kids in America want to be an NFL or an NBA or a rap star, or whatever, and here you want to be an actuary scientist.
Well, I think it changes. I think we all think those things until we get down to what is going to earn me a living, right? I'm going out into the real world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I like what you
Which is
said, though,
good.
about just thinking about the possibility. And it strikes me a lot that for every generation that breaks free from the way it's always been for their family, there has to be someone
That's
who
right.
says it can start with me. It's easy to look and sort of think people have special privilege or special the way they look at things. So often I find it's just whoever says, I want more. And you said, I want more. And it maybe started with more money, but you certainly got more over the course of your life. So you go into actuarial science, you get out of college, you start with that profession?
No, because something happened along the way. So
Okay.
that makes it more interesting, right? So I was in this mindset of I'm gonna be successful, I'm gonna make money, and then something happened along the way. I got there, and it became I was purposeless. I was aimless. The goal was to make money and be successful, but everything I was doing was kind of meaningless.
Hmm.
Like I go to school, I take this class, I go back home. There's a goal, but it seems like it doesn't connect. Like so it's empty. It's like so I got into the university that was an hour an hour and a half away from my family, so I had no parents. So freedom,
Right.
right? So then friends, parties, drugs started coming in because again, I wanted to be rich and successful, but I can't find any meaning in the everyday things that was happening in school. So that happened.
Wow. So you start going off into crazy stuff
Yeah,
and
crazy stuff like party every night. Because we had no parents, like
yeah.
so all that alcohol. I mean, we would go back home in our apartment at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., wasted, and then there's a knock on the door at 10 a.m. Okay, let's go drink some, do some again. So I was literally not going to any class. Sometimes I would go to class. It's the exam, and so it's like
Yeah.
so it became bad. So from having this goal to be successful and rich, it became bad because again, I can't find any meaning to what I was doing.
So, I'm thinking right now about drugs and alcohol. And so many people have that story. I had a small part of that story. I was delivered at age 18, and my whole life was changed, radically changed, and thank God. But the thing that happens with alcohol, the very first drink that I ever had, all right, I felt so good.
Mm.
Can anybody relate? I felt so good. It's like all of my cares and
You're
burdens,
free, right?
I was just liberated,
Wow.
right? And then the more you get into it, I started going to high school, and a lot of people would have a water jug, and I started filling mine up with beer. No teacher ever found out my
Wow.
You're
secret.
quite good.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I have no joy or pride in that. But to think how after a while, then what was liberating quickly turns to what is bondage. You become a
Yeah.
slave. And I became a slave. And it was within a 12-month period that all of a sudden it started one way. And that is the cycle for so many people. And my guess is that something changed your life.
Yes, that's exactly how it is.
How long did it take, Gilbert? I wanted just to ask you to explain a little more because it's, we're all now this age where you look back and it's kind of like, 5 years, you can gloss over it. But so you're in that environment and you're hanging out with those people and you started with this sense of vision that I'm going to do better. I'm going to ask for more. I'm going to make more. And now you're in this cycle of just being trapped, addicted, all of that. I think there's probably a lot of people listening and watching right now
Definitely.
who are in that trap. I mean, that is a subtle, quick trap that so many fall into. I mean, you might even be watching or listening, and you might be a high-end professional who just can't get through an evening without whatever you need
Right.
for comfort or all that. I mean, this is common. We all have varying levels of it. So you're going through that, and you're how old at this point?
I was 17, 16 when I got. So it was about for 3 years, three and a
Wow.
half almost. Yeah, I was
Mhm.
there. And for me, it's a sense of escape. Like there's no meaning. So when you get that drug, like you're getting out of that situation where you feel free. Like there's just almost that false sense of freedom, but then you're not free because you're trapped. And after you're sober, you're back to the same
Yep.
Yeah.
purposeless, meaningless, aimless life. And right, it happens to everyone, whether you have nothing or you have much. I think if you don't find that sense of meaning in what you do, you're going to try to find it or escape from it, but then there's no escaping because you find yourself in that same trap, like same bondage, same like you
Yeah.
can't get out.
Yeah. So what happened to you then?
Yeah. So what happened to me was this is a interesting story. I was junior in college, so I was always looking at, oh, who's the hottest girl, freshman girl, who's the so then there was this girl, and
Oh
I
boy.
thought, oh, she's hot and all that. So I wanted to make a move, and my friend said, bro, I mean, we're not, you're not gonna get her. She's Christian. She goes to church. She's got values. She's not gonna take one look at you. We're nothing. So don't ever think. So I said, okay. But then this girl who started giving out flyer. And the flyer was an invitation to a seminar entitled Rock and Roll Seminar.
Oh my goodness.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, Ron.
Oh yes, I am.
So
Oh my
what can
goodness.
go wrong, right? A beautiful girl plus rock and roll. I mean, that's it. So I'm gonna go. So I went to that rock and roll seminar. I I brought my friend. I said, "Let's go here. There's pretty girls, and it's rock and roll. They're gonna talk about rock and roll." And I got in the auditorium, and there's this fiery speaker,
Hmm.
which later on I found out he was a preacher preaching, and he spoke a lot of stuff that really addressed certain things in my heart that I didn't know anything about Bible or God or Christian or anything.
Right.
But it was just resonating in almost everything he said about purpose, about living for someone or something way bigger than yours. I mean, everything resonated in my heart. And I just knew during that time I was encountering something or someone that's pretty special. So, and then he made that call. He said, if you want to give your life to Jesus, it starts there. And I said, this is it. So I bowed my head. I said, but at, well, at that point, at that night, I was so embarrassed to raise my hand. I did not, but I knew I was already convicted. It took me the next night to go back and say, okay, I'm
What
doing this.
was it? The same thing?
It was the
It
same
was like
thing.
watching the same movie
Yes,
twice.
but here's the thing, because I was so embarrassed because I have friends there. I couldn't do this, but I was so I bought into everything he said.
Hmm.
I went back to my apartment. There were 9 people in our apartment. I started telling them everything that the preacher said. Like,
Wow.
so I wasn't even saved or transformed, but I started telling them, and I said, "You guys have to go with me." So the next night, all of them were with me, and I gave
Wow.
my life to Jesus, and most of them gave their life to Jesus. So,
Oh my
That
goodness.
is
That's
amazing
that's what we would
story.
call the miracle in Manila.
yeah,
Part 2.
But I know you've talked about those rock and roll seminars
Oh
that were
yeah,
going on
we've all
back
heard
then.
them. If you go back far enough, if I know that some people are watching from around the world, overseas, it's really sort of like a bait and switch, unintentional, where it's like you think it's, oh, this is like the history of rock and roll, and that wasn't the intention of the people who brought it. They actually wanted to expose certain things behind
yeah,
the good music.
Yeah.
Is a lot of stuff. It's
Yeah.
drugs, it's
Yeah.
sex, it's rock and roll, it's all the
Hmm.
stuff that goes on in that community, and we all grew up. Most Americans grew up that way,
Mhm.
and sooner or later they either mature out of it or they get addicted really badly and messed up, and they stay that way through their a lot of their life. Or some people like you and me have an instant deliverance moment. Now, like a lot of people, this is a long process, but out of the gift of God's grace, I believe it is, you had that moment and your life was forever changed.
Yes.
Wow. From that moment on, you were able
Yes.
to walk away from all of it?
That was amazing. Yeah. That moment on the craving for alcohol, for drugs, I mean, it was
Wow.
change. It was, and then from that day on, I started I started knowing that I was made for a purpose. That there's gonna be meaning in everything I do.
Wow.
Like even going to class. I mean, I read this verse in Colossians chapter 3, verse 23, where it says, in everything that you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for men. Like I'm not doing classes because I just want to be successful or to be rich. Or I'm not doing this for my mom. I'm not doing this. Suddenly it starts to have meaning. If I wash clothes, I mean everything I do starts because I'm doing it for God. He sees it. And it starts to have meaning, and it's so purpose started coming in, confidence that's not there before, security that nothing can take away from you started getting in. So it was amazing. It was and I still can vividly remember the feeling and everything now that I'm talking about it.
I mean,
Wow.
did you become an evangelist?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm an
I
evangelist,
mean,
but
here
I
you are
brought
with
a lot of people. I mean,
I mean, it
literally,
sounds like
Ron.
almost immediately you're sharing what happened to you with
Exactly.
other people, your roommates, I don't know if you're in
Yeah.
a dorm or an apartment.
Yes. And then every person I would meet, they're like, "What happened to you? Let me tell you what happened." And I'll tell them what happened. I'll bring them to church. So, I mean,
Wow.
I brought a lot of people. I
Oh my
started
goodness.
telling
This
them
is,
my story. It's almost like, right, if you're because if you eat food that's really good, you tell them, right? If you watch a movie that's really good, you tell them. I mean, this is more than food and movie. I mean, it's something so amazing. I have to tell them. Like, so,
It's no surprise then hearing that why you would go into the line of work that you've been in now for many years, because you lead whole network of churches there in the Philippines, but your personal sort of passion congregation, if you will, has been college students
yes,
because you want for them what happened to you.
that's exactly right. That's the reason why for almost 3 decades, my passion for students still there because I mean it happened to me. I know what it feels like to be a student, to be lost, to be purposeless, aimless, just running around. And especially now, right, with all the kinds of voices that students get from all over, and it's so easy to get lost.
yeah.
And so that's my life. I poured my life into that. I felt like God called me to invest everything I've got into these students. So
What's that been like? How do you describe the fulfillment and the satisfaction that you said so well is elusive to every one of us? I mean, I grew up in the church with a strong walk with God from the time I was born, basically,
wow,
and and
I
I am
know.
so grateful to have
blessed
that.
you.
I mean, honestly, what a gift that I
Yeah,
had parents,
yeah,
grandparents, community that I was born into. But even still, there is that cry of the human heart for definition of the purpose. Like, what is it and how do I know it?
yeah. So for me, so it was survival, and then it got to success was the dream. But after that, it's more I can do something significant with my life. So it's not it's sig- doing something significant with your life is much more fulfilling than success with fame or money or all this.
Right.
I started believing God can use me to do something significant. And So from just survival and success to significance, I think that's what's so fulfilling. Uh, because again, when I started pastoring a church of students, the offering is really heavy because of all the coins. So to be able to help a student find their purpose, find their security in God, uh, to find meaning. I mean, that's
Identity.
identity. Yes, that identity and purpose,
Yeah.
those two things, when you see that happening, that's one of the most fulfilling things.
What do you think is going on with students today since this is your focus? I mean, it seems like there's more and more family meltdown. I don't know what the statistics
Mhm.
are, but it just feels and seems that way, that more and more people are coming in with confusion and gender issues, questions about their faith, breakdown in the family. And a lot of people, when they get out of their home, then they begin to recognize, like, that was toxic.
Yeah,
That wasn't good. So what are you facing
yeah.
with students in particular?
Yes. I was I was trying to think if I were a student now,
Yeah,
I wouldn't know how to survive this because of all the onslaught of so many things. It's just a social media.
Yes.
And that's why I think one of the biggest challenges of students right now is mental health.
right.
And because of social media, I mean, there's just a barrage there, and there's so much more, right? You start comparing yourself with someone. There's an Instagrammable picture of someone, and you think they've got it all, and I don't have it. And so all these things that are happening and bombarding them, and then now all kinds of ideologies and all kinds of worldviews are being put in them because it's on the internet and in their pocket. So the confusion, the attack on their mental health, the attack on their identity, and I think because of all that, one of the responses that this young generation has done is I'm going to go expressive individualism.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in order for me to protect myself from all the onslaught that you're putting on me,
Yeah.
I'm going to say, I'm going to be proud to be just me. And that's negative in a way because we are just not us. We are connected. I mean, friendship with you has really enriched my life, Ron. I mean, every year I would go to campus harvest. I would hear you. I mean, we all live in a community, parents. I mean, it's not just about us. When you start living just for you and isolate yourself like just you, that's very dangerous and damaging, I think. So, but I think that's a reaction because of all this barrage of stuff. Then I'm gonna be me. I'm gonna be just express who I am and what I believe in, and I don't care with. I think it's more a reaction to that, and that's hard for young people, and so that's what I see now happening working with young people.
I agree totally. I was getting the analogy as you were sharing that. That was so well put the way you did it. It's kind of like if you've ever had, I think we all relate to this, where you have something going on with your body and you want to know if you're sick or if you need to go to a doctor. And so you go on the internet and you look it up, and then all of a sudden you like think you're even sicker than you were because now you're overwhelmed with information. And you're maybe you have this too, and maybe that's a symptom of this. And it's really dangerous. I've done that so many times. Then you're a parent, you're doing that for your kids' ailments and all this stuff. But here's the only way that you can get through those moments is you have to go to someone who's smarter than you, and it's a doctor. And you actually sit with a doctor. I know I have a friend who she goes to doctors a lot because she always wants to know if something's wrong with her. But when you talk to, and it's interesting that Jesus, who we all serve, is called the great physician. That's one of his names. And when you counsel with a really smart doctor, they're able to tell you, sure, you have that symptom, but let's talk about the fact that you're really healthy and you don't need to be caught up in that. And when we follow Jesus, the great physician, it is a rudder for our life. It's like getting your center on a compass to be in the right direction so that you're not tossed around by every thought of the world and every experiment. We don't have to go experiment. Try this for 6 months. That didn't work. Try that. Sexual identity, all kinds of different things. And we get to know who we are in light of God's assignment on our life. And that's what you're describing in working with college students all these years.
Yeah. And one of the things that was like really a major shock for me is like she grew up 2 years old knowing Jesus and going to church. I can just see her. They're all dressed up all the time. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't that like Anne of Green Gables, Pollyanaville or whatever, but it that's significant because you're protected by many things. Now it could be insulation or it could be, protection, all that. That could be overkill. And then when you're 16, you're driving a car and you go to Hawaii, you're just out of it. But one of the things that was like so incredible for me is that when I asked Jesus into my life, when he surprised me in a dorm room freshman year, when I really wanted to go crazier than ever, is that when he came into my life, for the first time, I had peace.
Like lasting peace, longer
Deep
than a
peace,
moment.
not like smoking weed or drinking a beer. I mean, it was like you walk outside
I
and
totally know.
all heck could be breaking loose all around you, but the peace still abides. It's not dependent upon a happening. It's not dependent upon a party. It's not dependent on the next thing. I could be standing there with a table and feel the joy of God and the peace of God in my soul. And to me, it's like that was the beginning of mental wellness for me. That was the beginning, was God. It wasn't going to see a psychotherapist. I'm not against that. It wasn't pills. I wasn't against that. I'm not against that. It's like if you have to do what you have to do under medical and
Yeah.
family advice.
Right.
However, that to me is a mental health gift. And this is something that a lot of people who are Jesus followers, a lot of people who are Christians don't understand. God doesn't just care about you and your work and your mind. He cares about you and your emotions. That is something that's real.
That is excellently put, Ron. I can relate totally with what you're saying. I mean, all the insecurities and the anxiety and the worries that I had, I was just totally. You use the word peace. I use the word security. Like I just feel secure that no
Right.
matter what happens, everything's gonna be good. Like
Yeah.
so, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. I just feel like there's someone that's tuned in today and it's almost like you've been completely overcome with the fear of death. Like you worry all the time that you're going to die. And there might be trauma in your background. It might just be what we sometimes refer to as just the enemy of our souls who's speaking death threats against you. And you can actually get free from that. And this is why we're here. And this is the hope that we know to be true is that God can absolutely set you free. And there's a verse in the Bible that I love that says, he who the Son, speaking of Jesus, the Son of God, he who the Son sets free is free indeed. Not just free by the obvious, but free on the inside. And you can get set free from this fear of death. You can
Absolutely.
absolutely get set free. And you can only do so much in our natural to be free. There's an end to that freedom. But in God, in Jesus, there's ultimate freedom.
Lynette, I'm so amazed at how you put it together. I was reminded of a story in the Bible where the woman was bleeding for 12 years, physically suffering, financially suffering, emotionally suffering because she was rejected. She couldn't go, spiritually suffering. She can't go to a church or a synagogue. And there were so many people, and Jesus was there. We're all familiar with this story, but for those who are joining us who's not familiar, there's this lady, and that's why I love your podcast because it's what what am I thinking, right? So there's this lady who wanted to get to Jesus, and everyone was there. Doctors had given up on her. That's like what you're saying. It seems like hopeless. But the Bible, there was a verse there that I remember that says, "She thought, if I can only touch the hem of Jesus' robe, I will be healed." It started with the thinking.
That's really good.
That
That's
is
so
very
good.
good.
And those words, I saw that.
Yeah, and
And
she
those words,
thought,
you go into the Greek language, and it was she was thinking
there,
habitually,
right,
continually.
right,
And how important that is
yeah,
for our viewing audience
yeah,
to know that the only way to defeat and change these negative thoughts is to replace it with positive,
yeah,
affirming thoughts or
yeah,
words.
yeah.
Words can always defeat and drive out our negative thoughts.
Exactly.
It's true.
Start thinking, Jesus can set me free. Start thinking, Jesus can get me there. Start thinking, Jesus can. There is nothing Jesus can, but start thinking that way. So,
Gilbert, this is radical because, I mean, you've seen this happen thousands of times in your context. You have one of the largest churches in the world now. I mean, hearing his background, wasn't that
Yes,
amazing to just hear about
fascinating.
this 6-year-old boy who was watching someone bleed out and the tragedy that you grew up in and so many people do, but then all of a sudden things begin to change for you. And that woman in that Bible story that you're telling, I mean, Bible stories aren't make-believe mythology. It's not once upon a time, galaxies far away. These are things that really did happen. There were eyewitnesses. And she had this condition for 12 years. And it was constant bleeding, constant problems.
Spent
And
all her money, says.
on doctors and nurses and chiropractors and orange juice and ginger juice and cocktails, health tonics, whatever. And then when she kept thinking, if I can just get into his crowd and break free. Now she did something in that context that was wrong. You know what it was, right? It was she had this issue of blood, and you're not allowed to be in the group. You have to go outside the camp and be clean before. And she drove right through, walked right through, and went to the lowest part of Jesus, the bottom of the hem of his garment, and she kneeled down and she touched it. And this is just, like, what was your point of contact? What was that place where you and your life changed, or you had something later in your life? 2 years old, it doesn't really count, but
Yeah,
something
but
later in
I
life.
mean, I
when
think
you
you
were in
keep
your womb,
you keep reaching, and it's never too late. I think that's the message we're saying right now to anybody that's listening today is your story's not over yet. I mean, we have to believe that if we have breath in our lungs and we're still alive. I mean, you tuned into today's podcast by perhaps the divine hand of God. The story isn't over yet. And when we realize that there's more, and she kept somehow grabbing a hold of that, there's got to be more. It's sort of like, I don't know if you've ever dealt with headaches, but if you have a headache that doesn't go away, you're going to keep trying to get rid of those headaches because it makes life unbearable. And soul stuff, soul pain, soul heartache, I mean, mental anguish, it's like trauma that never goes away, but God can intervene. And that's
amazing.
what he's done, not only to you, but now
Through
you
Yes.
all these years.
Praise God. We're proud of you,
Thousands of
man.
students.
I mean,
Thank you.
you have just what a role you have in the global platform that you have, and the significant ways that God has used you to change your nation. And I'm going to champion that you be president, not just of Manila, but of the world, world president.
I do have a question for you, Gilbert. When you think about, because this is also what I heard in your story, the power of community.
Yeah.
So you got invited to because you thought this girl was pretty, whatever it takes,
Did
right?
you end up?
And
Whatever it
she's
takes.
now my wife.
Right.
There you go. I was wondering.
The
Yes.
original inviter
go.
is your wife. That is
That's pretty cool. You took that brochure and took her home.
Exactly.
Did
I bet she didn't go until you were right.
Did she wait to see how long, or like if you were really cleaning your act, right?
Yeah, I can see it in her eyes. Like, waiting
Wow.
for me.
The power of invitation, the power of community, the power of being around the right people.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit
Oh
about
yes.
that.
That's exactly what happened next. Yes, I had this great uh change thinking everything, but I could not have been to where I am now without people around me. So what happened was I met the people in church. They became my friends, lifelong friends. Then we became roommates in college. We started sharing lives together. We were encouraging one another when one is down. Somebody's gonna pick him up and encourage him, and I became part of we people talk about community now. It's more like a spiritual family for me. It's like brothers and sisters were there with me, and even up to now. I mean, as great as what I'm doing is, it can never be done without people around me, without friends like you. I was saying every year I would go to North Carolina. I would hear Ron, and I would get around people. Uh, just to get that fire again. The Bible does talk about bad company corrupts good character. So I've seen that in my life, but the reverse of that is also true. If you've got good company, then good character will be formed in you, and that has been an amazing journey for me.
Yeah. I
Wonderful.
love the way you describe it. I think too, I've been to so many over the years in my corporate career and all that. You go to these networking events, you go to parties, whatever they are, and empty people have little to offer because there's not much to talk about. Everybody's kind of self-aware, self-protecting. There's not much to pour out. But when you get in a community of people who have a lot of life in them, they actually have a reason for their life. They know what their purpose is. They have more left to give away. And if you've never had those kind of friends, you don't know what you're missing. But when you start having those kind of relationships, these life-giving, lifetime friendships, where you can make a phone call at a down moment and they're going to pour out and lift you up.
And that's what I really found fascinating, because it's we live in an age of disposable relationships. Like I
Right.
use you, I get something from you, then we're
Right.
done. But I've found lifelong friends in this community, lifelong friends, people who genuinely care for you, genuinely love you, not
Mm.
just because there's something they can get from you, but genuine. So I love this community. God has blessed me
And I
with
think for people who are watching today, I think it's important to know that sometimes that's a process to find that community, find that group,
Mhm.
find that church.
Yeah,
In some places, it's
yeah,
churches have to be underground or
yeah.
in private locations. But I would say that they're out there, and we want to reach out to you. And you can see it for those who are watching on the screen here. We have a point of contact here where you can reach out to us, and there's someone who's going to be praying for you or help give you guidance, and you can let us know what's going on in your life, and
Yeah.
we would love to find a way to stay in touch with you and help you find a good community.
Yeah, you were telling us the story before we started the cameras about you and your wife actually lost a baby, a full-term child,
Yes,
lived 2 days, you said?
yes. 2 days. Yeah.
So talk about the role of community during times like that.
Oh yeah, it's amazing the kind of support, because that was the time that I had a friend, a pastor friend in Manila, whose a 9-year-old son got sick. So for a month they were in the hospital. So we were praying for him to get well and to get healed. You see, as pastors, we pray for a lot of people and they get healed. But now his son is not getting healed. So I remember on a Sunday, so my wife was pregnant. On a Sunday, he texted me and he said, "My son is gone."
Hmm.
Wow.
So I received that, and I thought at first, gosh, I told my wife, I said, I can imagine losing a child.
Hmm.
Sunday. Then when then the next day we got to the doctor. The doctor saw for the first time something's wrong with the baby. And the doctor said, we have to schedule you for a CS the next day. because something's not right with the baby. Tuesday she was born, Wednesday she was dead. So Sunday I just said,
Mm.
I can imagine how it is to lose a child. Wednesday our own child was dead. Uh, and then during that week, one pastor said we had more questions than answers during that time. And maybe you're here and thinking you have questions that are unanswered. It doesn't matter as long as I know who's got the answer to those questions.
Yeah.
God had answers to those questions. And the peace
Mm.
that you were saying was overwhelming in spite of the pain. So the grace of God was there. I remember when the doctor called me, I rushed and she was already lifeless. And the first thing we did was we were worshiping. My wife was wheeled in a wheelchair because she was still in pain and all that. But the first thing was worship. And because of the community around us who supported us, were praying for us. I remember a few friends from church were there. So when and then everything else that we needed, they were there. They said, "What help can we give? How can we serve you?" So it was amazing. We never felt alone during that one of the darkest, deepest trials that we've been, because God was there and then the community was there. So that was amazing.
That might sound crazy to you if you're listening today. Like, how do you lose a child and somehow worship? We have that in common with you. We lost a son,
Oh, I'm
and
sorry.
our
Yeah,
son Jordan.
yeah, Jordan. I
23.
remember
He was
that.
23, and I was thinking when you were describing the journey, how we had 3 funerals for Jordan, and at each funeral, and there was 3 because he had friends in different cities and we had family in different cities, but at each of the funerals, or maybe it was 2.
It was 2.
It was 2.
I was trying to.
Yeah, it was 2, but
It felt like 20.
yeah, it felt like about 50, but, it was 2, and, but what both services had in common was this moment where we did sing and we did praise God because we
Yes.
knew, and of course now it's been 10 years almost, it chokes me up, but what you do in those moments is you declare in faith what you know to be true about your God, that he is good, that he is loving, that sickness is not from him, that death is not how it was meant to be, that he conquered death through his own life, Jesus, in his burial and his resurrection, but not ultimately yet. We're waiting for that day when all of it will be put right. But
Yes.
now we're 10 years later and we miss him and we still get sad, but there's been so much fruit that's come out of his life. And
Oh,
so what that teaches you over a lifetime is that when it doesn't make sense,
yeah,
you can still trust God.
yeah,
Totally.
You can trust him because over time you'll get more answers. Maybe we still never understand why it was better for him to die at 23 than at 83, like we want for our kids. But we do trust God and we know he's good.
yeah.
Yeah. So we share this now. We share this in common, and we're survivors and we're overcomers. And as Scripture says, that we do not grieve as those do who have no hope. We do have
Beautiful.
hope.
Yeah.
We hope in the resurrection. We hope in eternal life.
Yeah,
And we hope in God's promises.
that's right.
And
That's
so
right.
we don't grieve the same way. It's certainly painful and grieving
Yeah.
and all of that. And we're covering a lot of ground here today. We're talking about our life stories and your journey, Pastor Gilbert, and what you've accomplished and what you've done, and mental health and mental wellness. But you bringing up the word purpose a lot, and meaning, and I think is more the psychological term is meaning, and just in general, people use the word purpose.
Yeah.
And this is something that Lynette, you've sort of like been pioneering this for.
Well, yes, and really it came out of my own desperation because, I knew God and I have felt his purpose for my life. But even below that grand narrative of purpose to serve God and know him and love him is the question that every human heart has, which is, what is my purpose and why am I here? And what's going to really, you nailed it, what's going to really create the significance at the end of the day.
There
And
we
you and I
go.
were talking over lunch on Sunday about how my business partner Jamie and I have been building this company, and some of the rest of our team that's in this room right now, on really going to people in a culture that's longing for purpose and providing tools, providing resources, and providing methodologies to help someone get in tune with their life purpose. And the thing I love about it, every time someone really nails it, and we take it so far as you got to write it out, you got to be able to say it, it's got to flow off your tongue. Someone says, what's your purpose? You got to be able to spit it out. But when someone gets it written, and I remember even when we were doing that
I was just
in our
thinking about
living room
that.
that day when you said, I'm ready to get my purpose.
I'm ready to. I knew my purpose, but I'd never written it out, and
Yeah, it's like,
wasn't
let's
sure
get it
which
right.
words do I use or how do I communicate it in one sentence, because I would tell my purpose in a couple hours.
Well, how long do you have? Let me tell you about my purpose.
Right.
But when someone is able to say it, there is so much life that comes in that moment. You know what we're talking
Yeah.
about? It's
Yeah,
like it's
exactly.
because now I can actually get in a tune with why I was made, why I was created. And when you know that, you can endure the worst job, the worst boss, the seasons of my career where I made like no money and wondered, why am I really doing this? But because I knew my purpose, there was meaning beyond what we think will bring the meaning. And you help people do that all the time.
Yeah. I'm excited for we have to bring you to Manila.
Hey,
Bring
let's
that.
go. Let's
Yeah.
do it.
I mean, I'm just excited for you to get that out, rolled out all over the world. I've heard you say that over lunch last Sunday, and I can't wait. I can't wait to see all of those, the whole thing, the whole package.
It's coming, and I've just it's an interesting journey for me with it too, because I really believe that God gave me the download working at Deloitte, big firm here in New York. I believe that in my desperate times of wanting more meaning, he gave the tools to me, and yet I think really 20 years later that now's the time when the world is waiting post-pandemic.
So much needed post
Yes.
pandemic with all the things that are happening in the workplace and even in the campuses with the young people for them to find their purpose at an early age like that. I mean, that's going to be a game changer. Like, wow, I'm
Yeah,
excited.
death is not the answer. One of the universities near where we live has had just a wave of suicides this year. And,
Yeah.
that level of desperation
Oh,
where there's no
exactly.
reason to live.
Have you
Yes.
seen that? Have you seen that in Europe, in Asia, or
Yes.
you have?
Also in
Because this
Asia,
is
in the
like
Philippines.
20-minute drive from our North Carolina home to go to this university, and they've had like 5 suicides within a 3-month period of time,
Yeah.
or 6.
Tragic.
It's like we don't we you hear about it maybe once a year, but now all of a sudden, and I think you hit on something, and I have no idea what's what in the causation of people wanting to take their lives. But there's one thing for sure, and that is the digital life that everyone's living from the minute they wake up until they go to bed, with all these waves and frequencies and everything hitting us. And then there's all the FOMO and all the other stuff that goes with social media. One person called it digital fentanyl, that it
Yeah.
is 100% addictive. When people around me who are younger and they lose their phone, and I'm a little bit like this too, and they lose their phone, they go almost crazy. They will go right out in the middle of a highway, an interstate highway, and like, stop, everybody, until I can find this phone. So, you brought up some good things, and I want you to just share a quick thought on what is your purpose and how others can find purpose.
I have not done the workshop, but I'm not sure if I can articulate this if this is right, Lynette. But I feel like my whole purpose is to is to help young people, help students. I feel like campus ministry. I'm a campus missionary for life. That's what I feel like.
Yeah,
I can be really all
I
at
love that.
campus. So
I love that.
yeah, so I feel like helping students find their identity and purpose in God. So that's where I find to be most fulfilled. I mean, with all the things that I'm doing in my job right now, uh, the most fulfilling still is being with students and pouring out to them,
Yeah,
whether preaching the gospel to them, discipling them, or developing
yeah.
their leadership, mentoring them, whatever I can do to help
Yeah,
these students find their identity and purpose.
I mean, that's great. And
it's true.
I really deeply appreciate that and respect that, Gilbert.
That is your purpose, and we'll get to your purpose statement eventually, Gilbert. We're going to get you one.
Yeah.
But you already know it so much, and it's already on the tip of your tongue. And that when I was at Deloitte in the senior marketing role and wrote my purpose statement for the first time, my purpose, in a nutshell, is to inspire and motivate others to know their purpose and live their dreams. And looking at my job description, nothing related to that on my job description. But when you know your purpose,
Yeah.
it's so much broader than your job. Your job is one of your missions, but your purpose is your why.
Yeah.
It answers the question why, and you know your why. And so it never, this is a cool thing about purpose too, it's ageless. So when I'm 85, I'm going to still be passionate about helping
Let's
people
do
know
it,
their
baby.
purpose and live their dreams.
We're hanging on.
Yeah, we're doing it.
Right.
All of us, we're doing it.
So thank you. And maybe you can see on the screen now, for those who are watching, that here's a place where you can reach out to the Purpose Program, My Why.
Yes, we'll
As
get
we're-
you more information.
As we're closing this up right now, I just keep thinking about how much Jesus emphasized that it is so significant and important to God your Father that you live an abundant life. And Jesus said it like this. He said, the thief, the enemy, the thief comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy. And that's his playground. And Jesus said, but I have come that you might have life and might have it abundantly, overflowing, just always overflowing. This life that is not something that's dependent on happenings and where we're going, the club, the bar, the whatever is happening next. It's because it is a life-giving relationship that's not full of oppressive laws and rules and regulations. And if you do this, you get zapped. God is a loving God. He cares for you. He is looking for you. He's not mad at you. He's mad about you. He wants, he is, there's a scripture that says he's jealous for us. He is. There's a jealousy that is a good jealousy. Not all jealousy is a bad jealousy. Some a jealousy can be good. I could be jealous over my wife, her time and our togetherness and our vacations that we talk about, that we dream of, and this is something that God has for you. And today is the day of salvation. It's the day of wellness. It's the day of overcoming. It's the day of breakthrough. This is your day. And God sent in a great man today into this New York City studio to talk about so many lives being changed, young people. And he's just at the beginning. He's just on not even almost at the halfway point of how God's going to use him. But the main thing that we want to say to you is there is a future and a hope for you. And this is not just making up nice things to say as we end this, but it's to say that right now, Jesus is standing by you and at the door of your heart, knocking and saying, if you let me in, we will fellowship together, we'll dine together, we will live this abundant life together. That's your experience. That's your experience. We all have different backgrounds, and it's my experience.
That's right.
And wherever you are, God knows where you are. And today is the day of salvation. So I want to just right now give you that opportunity to receive Jesus into your life. You've heard the stories today, and we're not making them up. Like the original disciples who followed Jesus, they through the persecution, the opposition, the harassment, you guys are crazy. Through all that, they just keep saying, no, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. So today is your day. And we just pray right now, Father God, we thank you for our friends who are right now on the other side of this camera. And thank you that you're with them now and you're touching hearts right now and asking you, Lord Jesus, forgive us of our waywardness and our sins. And we receive you, Jesus, into our hearts, minds, thoughts, purpose, and life. And we pray this day would be a marked difference on our path to an abundant life. In Jesus' name.
You made that decision. We've got more resources for you. Don't worry. We've got you covered. We'll be in touch. You can be in touch with us. You made a great decision for your life, and the best is yet to come. Thank you,
Way to go,
for
Gilbert.
being with us.
Thank you. This is
Love you, man.
amazing.
Love you,
It
my
was
brother.
great being together.
You're my new best
My
friend,
hero.
man. Come on.
We'll see you next time.